Mei is a top tier character in Guilty Gear Strive. So you might be surprised, but people actually find this to be a controversial statement. In a lot of videos I post about characters, whether it's tier list or maybe discussing or analyzing certain characters, people always break up what are the reasons that high-level Guilty Gear players say that Mei is so good so consistently. So today I'm going to try to clear this up for you, and the way we're going to do this is by looking at her strengths and her weaknesses and just kind of how she ends up fitting and working into the game, especially in the current patch. But before we do that, we have to look at what type of character Mei actually is. So Mei is a counter poker who does a lot of damage if she hits you successfully. If you're wondering what a counter poker is, so while she has decent attacks for neutral in general, the point of a lot of her attacks are to actually hit people's hurt boxes. So this is Mei's 5H. So on its own, maybe not the most inspiring move, but it just beats a lot of different ways of attacking. Mei is a mid-range character, but that's pretty common in this game. So she differentiates herself with Dolphin and more counter pokes. Dolphin, her trademark special move, lets her simultaneously travel to fill up space, bait people into striking at it with a leap follow-up, can act as a poke in neutral, and combined with her unique jump and backdash, makes her quite mobile. When you tie this with her high damage output, you get a pretty fast character who's also scary to swing into, who gets really rewarded for closing the distance on characters, and is especially rewarded for counter hits, which we'll touch on later. So next, let's look at Mei's strengths as a character. We already mentioned it, but she just has a lot of good hitboxes to throw out. A lot of her stuff doesn't have that much recovery, and in the case that you swing into it, that she gets rewarded with a big counter hit. She also has a lot of weird interactions on a bunch of her pokes. So for example, here we have Jacko, and this is Mei's Far Slash. So if you use 6P against Mei's Far Slash, you'll predictably win this exchange. 6Ps in Guilty Gear bare minimum have invulnerability from above the waist. So this type of interaction makes sense for Jacko to win. But what about this move? So this is Mei's 5K. She's had this pretty much in every Guilty Gear game, but there's a lot of weird interactions with this move in this game. If I use that 5K against Jacko's 5P, who do you think would win? Take a sec, pause the video if you want. Look at the hitboxes and hurt boxes if I didn't put them up. If you answered Mei, you are correct. So despite 6P being a move kind of designed to beat moves like this, Mei's just kind of wins anyway. And the main reason really comes from she is striking slightly below the waist. So even though this move looks like a pretty standard poke, it has a very unique interaction. There are actually moves in the game that were like this before, like Milia's launch Far Slash, for example, but any like special exception like that has been changed except for Mei. If you're wondering, doesn't this depend on character? The answer, of course, is yes, but it's still a pretty unique thing about the move in which, in my opinion, basically 6P should just beat it. Another example comes actually from her 5P. The Dolphin is minus on block and she goes into the standing jab. So the Dolphin is -3, so that turns this 4-frame jab into a 7-frame jab. So after S Dolphin, who do you think wins? Soul's crouching jab or Mei's standing jab? And if you answered Mei's standing jab, you're correct again. So this is another example of just her hitboxes being kind of funky. You can win with 2K in this specific case, but you generally have to lap this by character and also by position because Mei can bounce off to different positions. It can be pretty hard to judge these situations in matches as well. Next, the character is just oddly fast. She's not really mentioned as a speed character. Normally we're talking about characters like Chip and Milia and Giovanna as far as fast characters. Between Dolphin being 7 frames and just traveling at you for hitbox and safe, her 4-frame backdash, so she has the fastest type of backdash, least amount of invul, but just hard to see in neutral, and her uniquely high jump with unique gravity just makes her difficult to hit in neutral. A lot of characters, when I make character analysis videos for like DLC characters, I'll talk about like slow jump H's, for example, and them being hard to anti-air. So she has this in a couple of normals, but the main one you'll see people talk about would be jump S, in that if you don't anti-air fast enough, you'll just get hit. Surely you can use another normal, you might think, or surely you can just anti-air earlier. So these things combined just make it surprisingly hard to hit Mei in neutral if you're a character that has to approach in a standard fashion. And funny enough, we have to talk about Dolphin specifically as a strength. So this move is really unique in this game. It is a traveling attack that is pretty fast, at least the S version, and is safe on block. But also, since they made it easier to actually hit the Dolphin, she now also has feints, like just stopping, which they don't actually use in neutral very often. Instead, they use the very powerful jumping follow-up, because a lot of the time people are going to be using 6P or large horizontal attacks. So I have two simple recordings here. One is just Mei doing Dolphin as normal. The other is Mei feinting into leap. And I'm going to just try to 6P on reaction. She's backdashing once here, so I do have a little time to actually see the move coming. So since leap can be done during the Dolphin, if you just hard react to it, she could bait you, which kind of discourages you from swinging into it. And she was already good at counter poking, so having another thing that makes it hard for you to swing definitely hurts against the character. And in the case you try to use another button, like a long range button, to try to hit the Dolphin preemptively, the leap can go over that as well. Then the next thing we have to talk about is her damage. Even a simple unoptimized combo of this character does a ton of damage. But her peak damage tends to come from counter hits. And it's not like she's bad at getting those. She also has high guts. So for example, right now, I have her at about 30% HP. And since she has 4 guts, she is able to endure. Compare this to a character that has 0 guts, like Faust. So Faust dies here because he has no guts. In the case of a more inexperienced player, this also might mean they will misjudge whether or not they will kill and spend resources where they don't have to, and Mei will live where a character like Faust or Zato would die. You would expect this from big body characters, but not a small character like Mei. As a lazy, easy rule, if the character is Japanese, they probably have a lot of guts. So Mei is Japanese, so she has a lot of guts. Mei is also quite difficult to burst. So here we have a simple example of her command grab. So a little damage first, and then we command grab. So the command grab itself, you can combo out of. So the grab itself is burst safe, right? You can't burst. But then the H Dolphin after, you also can't burst. And then the close slash after is extremely difficult to burst. If you burst on the hit, you cannot burst that. And once you get hit by the close slash, your last hope is the button after, but it splats. And you could try to burst before that. And this timing is quite hard. Again, it's something you have to do preemptively. And if you don't time your burst right, you just get splat. So she has a lot of guessing games she can do against your burst. And frankly, she's been good against burst since the game came out. This thing about her being really safe against burst also applies to her pressure and YRC, where she's really difficult to YRC because of her close slash recovering quickly. And like her H Dolphin is burst safe, it's also YRC safe. In addition to standard fare like jabs being safe to YRC as well. Then another weird strength about her is that she's one of the characters in the game that had a common weakness, but the system mechanics changing in season 3 took those weaknesses away. So what I mean is, traditionally, one problem that Mei always has is that even though she's good at combos, especially on counter hits, she's not usually able to confirm slash buttons. So for example, far slash, of course with meter, these hits are going to be very rewarding, but that's a resource, right? And if we're talking about Roman cancel, then that's something that the game needs to be played in order for you to get that resource. So either you need to be hitting them, making them block, running at them, block things, get hit by things. So no, what we're talking about is Wild Assault, because they gave her the red Wild Assault. So what would have been before a small amount of damage into kind of a guessing game situation for both players can now turn into an immediate wall break. I have Baiken here too, because Baiken is one of many characters that had this weakness in previous versions. This is also a type of thing you would hear about from like Ram players, for example, how Ram couldn't convert her slash buttons very well in previous versions. And since Baiken has blue Wild Assault, you basically cannot get combos off this unless you have some type of resource already. Start with crouching heavy slash or standing heavy slash, or you get a counter hit of some sort, but off the counter hit you would usually use something else and not the resource. So Mei's hits have a lot more weight this patch, and to be fair, they're usually not confirming normal hits into Wild Assault. They're usually converting counter hits into charged red Wild Assault instead. And then finally, she has a uniquely strong set of defensive options for a character that does not have a meterless reversal. So for starters, her jab is 4 frames and goes into knockdown, as does her crouching jab. Her crouching jab is 5 frames, so that prevents her from being frame trapped by throws in specific situations, where having the standing 4 frame is good, but you usually have to switch to that, so it's a little slower even though it's 4 frames. That being said, her standing jab is quite large. She also has the 4 frame backdash. So her backdash being 4 frames, while it has less invincibility, you can't really react to it, so that applies to both neutral and defense, where the big body backdashes are above 20 frames, so you do have time to visually see them and then pick something. Finally, this super is 2 hits and the whale is always out, and there's a lot of shenanigans that you could do with this super. So I was blocking low this whole time and it actually crossed me up. So I have to block correctly. I have to switch my guard because of where Mei is going. Of course, you can interrupt with various ways or simply block it depending on the situation, as she's very punishable. But once she has extra meter in play, then she can be a little gremlin, for lack of a better word. So I have a recording here of Mei doing her super, and this is something that people complain a lot about with DPs. So here's her doing 2 jabs, and here's her going jab into low. I'm trying to hold up and I can't do it, and I'm just gonna do my best to defend against this. So like characters such as Bridget and Leo, Mei also has the dreadful reversal into immediate 50-50. So with all these strengths, what are Mei's weaknesses then? She really doesn't have that many, but for starters, that whale super is not fast. So characters that can't safe jump fast reversals, like 9 frame reversals such as Soul's DP, they can safe jump that super after wall break pretty easily, and it makes it so that you can just cover her options. This next one is odd to say in Guilty Gear in general, and probably is its own topic, but she doesn't necessarily combo off everything that she does. So technically she does because of Wild Assault, but again, Mei players typically want to confirm counter hits into red Wild Assault, but it's not to the extent of like a Baiken or Zato, where sometimes this or this is quite literally all you can get. She does get to go into Dolphin. Whether or not this is an actual weakness to you or not definitely depends on the type of player you are. So for example, if you play characters like Happy Chaos or something, you would see this as overall not great, because Happy Chaos can convert hits that no character can hit confirm. But if you still play one of the couple of characters that are either hard to convert hits with or just don't get combos off all this stuff, you won't think of this as a big weakness, because you'd be like, oh well, you get to go into Dolphin anyway, so it's fine. So how do these tie into each other? So Mei in this game, there are definitely versions where her weaknesses are pretty negligible and she does well against some pretty important characters in the game. One of the best counter picks for Happy Chaos for a long time has been Mei. Good use of Dolphin actually makes it pretty difficult to use steady aim, and while this reticle does track, Mei is pretty good at making the reticle just not lock on. And thanks to some of the normals he has to chase Mei in a pretty unique way. And since Happy Chaos does not have a meterless reversal, it makes reversing defensive situations very scary. So if it seems like the character doesn't really have big weaknesses, has a long list of strengths, then why don't people pick her often in tournaments? So in my opinion, I think it's a combination of 3 things. Even in tournaments, people can pick characters for any reason, and there's a lot of people who either they always want to play the same archetype, so people who always play grapplers or zoners or things like that. People want to play their favorite characters, and even things that you might be surprised to hear from competitive players like, oh, I don't want to play a charge character. There is another character like this in the game, Leo Whitefang, who is not really that popular amongst all Guilty Gear players, but is heavily represented at high level play because he is constantly in like top 4s or winning. So Mei is pretty similar. So then there are just also patches. The game gets updated. And again, if we compare to Leo has been changed honestly quite a bit since the game has come out, but overall he's been doing the same things, and Leo players, they don't really complain about his changes very often. But the Mei player base is a little bit different. So in my case, I actually learned Mei. So not only did I start this game with Mei in the beta, I played Mei, mostly because there was no Milia. So I just played another character that I was familiar with and was pretty easy to play. But also around the middle of 2.5, really like a year ago. At this time, Happy Chaos is giving me a lot of problems. Baiken is better compared to the majority of the cast, but I found myself dropping a lot of sets to Happy Chaos, so I decided to try Mei. And Mei was really good this time last year. But then 3.0 dropped, and a lot of Mei players were saying that she was heavily nerfed. So just like when I tried her from 2.0 to 2.5, when Mei players said she was heavily nerfed, I ended up stopping playing her again, along with Baiken getting a lot of changes and demanding a lot of my time again. I get the feeling that Mei players react far more strongly to changes than some other player bases do. For the most part, in games in general, people don't react well to changes. But Mei, it's been somewhat consistent that they say she's heavily nerfed and she's bare minimum high tier, most of the time still top tier. And then the last reason I think you don't see her too much in tournaments is the inevitable passage of time, talent drain. So of course we still have like Slash still performing really well. There's also Yu and Kirako out of Japan. But there were more Mei players competing, like for example in North America. But by the time this video drops, it'll be like a week or two before the 3-year anniversary of Guilty Gear Strive's release. So there's just a bunch of people who did play her in tournaments who are not playing anymore. And you know, that makes sense. But yeah, this is pretty much why you hear so many high-level players saying Mei is really good, but you don't see her too often in tournaments. But she is like Leo, that it's pretty common to see her at like a top 8 in an international level tournament. So far we've only had really 3 this year, and she was represented at 2 of them, the World Tour Finals and also Frosty Faustings. Yes, the same player, but this is also what we can say about like characters like Leo, for example. Leo probably the best comparison with Mei, and also it's kind of funny that Tempest used to play Mei and now plays Leo, so all these things are kind of connected in an interesting way. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it. I made a community post like a couple of days ago about Medify. Medify is charging the coaches on the platform like $30 a month to use the platform. So normally I don't like shill my Medify really. Just if people ask, do you do coaching, I go yes, please go through Medify. But if you're interested in that, you can message me on Twitter or something, or maybe I guess the website. I guess I have to use the website more now. I decided to pay for it, to stay on it and pay for it, because people do ask me enough. But since they are doing this method, I'm letting you know actively I do have one if you're interested in that. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.